Hello, everybody. Welcome to this September's edition of the Community Office Hours. We have a very exciting topic. I'm Heather. Monica is my co-host, and we have Jeff and Alessandro here to tell us all about Conversation View. So, Jeff, this is your first time on a Community Office Hours. Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your role is at Thunderbird.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. I am from Auckland, New Zealand. I am outside my current time zone at the moment, which is how I get to be on this thing. I am a senior staff engineer at Thunderbird. I've been hanging around this place for way too long. Um, and they about seven and a half years ago, they decided to employ me, and I have been fixing Thunderbird ever since.
Yeah, that's great. And you're in Vancouver right now because there was a work week where a bunch of you lovely folks got together to hack on this topic, Conversation View.
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear how that all went, besides like the emails that you sent us daily, which was very nice.
You're
Especially
very
with the
welcome.
pictures. It was great for
Yeah,
those of us who weren't there. We're like, oh, we want to be
right.
there.
So, Alessandro, do you want to take it away and
Yes.
take us on a journey of Conversation View?
Oh my goodness, so exciting. Yes, let's do this. So thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk about all the wonderful work that we've been doing. We're gonna talk a little bit about the work week experience that we had, about Conversation View, but taking a step back because Jeff is here, we can actually explore a little bit what does it mean doing Conversation View? What are the technical challenges that we are facing and how we're approaching, but especially why does Thunderbird doesn't do Conversation View and was never able to do Conversation View for more than 20 years. So let's jump right into it. First of all, what is Conversation View? Conversation View is, we did some user survey, and when you just go on the street and you talk with people, because that's what you do, you talk about emails with people on the street, the first thing that they think about is like Gmail. When you open a message or you're having a back and forth, you reply a bunch of times and the person or other people that reply to your message, if you open that one, you should be able to see all the emails that belong to that thread. You should be able to see your replies in line. You should be able to see if you move a message to another folder, that message should still belong to the same thread and don't break the chronological order and the logic of reading of that thread, but just giving you like a little label, hey, this message physically is actually in this folder, but because it belongs to the thread, you can read it all together. And this is pretty much a standard way of consuming emails. Almost all the clients do that. Almost the webmail, the web email services offer these type of things, but Thunderbird doesn't because we're special. So we're trying to fix that. So the question is why Thunderbird doesn't have it. We know we're very much behind. The current situation comes from many, many eons ago. Thunderbird has almost 30 years. Like version 1 was in 2004, so we passed 20 years and we're aiming for the third floor now. But the original implementation of Thunderbird was all based on MORC. MORC is a computer file format that email clients and browsers used to use, some still do, like Thunderbird, and it was originally produced by Netscape and then later on by Mozilla Foundation. Yes, in Thunderbird, we're still actively running and consuming Netscape code. It's phenomenal. The complexity of the MORC is that first is one file per folder. There's no global concept of MORC the way that is implemented. Every time you receive a message, the message is stored, the indexing and the data that we need to quickly get the message back locally, it's stored in the folder where it is. So it's pretty impossible to group multiple messages, even if they belong to the same thread, there are in different folders because we don't have a global database that allows us to do that. MORC is also extremely cumbersome and complicated because it's a text-based Unicode file. Even if you open it up, it's absolutely impossible to read. and it's very difficult to parse. I'm sorry to bring this up, but people might still remember our folder corruption of last year. That was all pretty much Mork because we parsed it incorrectly and we did a bunch of bad things. And it was very difficult to figure out why some messages are being parsed correctly, other incorrectly, why some messages are suddenly broken. The Unicode doesn't close itself properly, and all these wonderful things. Throughout the years, others engineers that were working at Thunderbird wanted to try to find a solution. An approach that was attempted a while ago was this Gloda implementation. Sometimes you can hear around people saying Gloda or a reference in Gloda in our source code on Bugzilla or even in Mozilla Connect. Gloda is a JavaScript implementation for global search and indexer that was first implemented in Thunderbird 3. The idea was trying basically to solve the problems of Mork, having a single global database, an SQLite file in your profile that would index all of your messages and even a little bit of message summarization. So you could search, you could return all the messages together. It didn't matter which folders they were, in which MSF files they were. MSF is the shorthand for Mork folder summaries. Unfortunately, Gloda, it's still kind of based on Mork, like it just indexes what's inside the Mork file, is extremely slow. We're talking 15 plus years of old JavaScript implementation that weren't at the time all the niceties that we have today, a very modern and fast JavaScript. It's extremely over-engineered, cumbersome, it's difficult to understand. It's extremely slow. We have a ongoing experimentation that you can actually test on daily. If you want to be adventurous and consume Gloda a little bit, you can access your settings in the general tab, enable conversation view. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The most obvious things is that when you receive a bunch of new messages, Gloda takes a fair amount of time. It's fairly inconsistent on how fast it is to index all those messages. You might open a conversation, it's completely blank, doesn't return anything, or you open a conversation and you have your same reply listed 3 times, the same message listed multiple times. We have all these wonderful idiosyncrasies, but it's still, Gloda is a layer on top of what we have that tries to simulate a global database, but is really not a global database. It just tries to mask the difficulties of Mork. So we always knew we wanted to do that. I think like Jeff, he said, has been around for more than 7 years. I think like on day one, he looked at this and said, no, we need something better. And of course, we need to use some modern solutions to fix our modern problems, because maybe Mork at the time was a good implementation. It was absolutely serviceable for what users needed. At the time, we only had POP accounts and a lot of things were done locally per folder. Today, email conversation is off the chart. You could have 30 years of emails stored in your account and you need to access those. And sometimes you need to reference a message that was sent like 5 years ago and you need the full thread of that conversation. Just the size of inbox of our users just bubbled up outside of proportion, and Mork cannot handle that with all the modern technology that we have right now. So this, of course, we approach this with, it's just indexing messages. Like, how hard can it be? Come on, it's just something. But every time someone told us, like, can you just do this? Can you just implement a new database? All the engineers inside Thunderbird were just having a fit and just like collapsing and started crying and asking for help, because we know how incredibly difficult and complicated it is. And that's when I'm gonna hand off this section of the presentation to Jeff, because he was the one that kicked off the Panorama initiative. Jeff.
Yeah, I'm to blame for the name Panorama, which is also the name of an old product that Firefox used to have, or an old feature they used to have. Mozilla is certainly guilty of reusing code names for things. But I chose the name Panorama because it's a way to, it describes looking at everything. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put all of the things, all of the mail at least, in a single database so that you can look at it all at once. Initially, the plan is when you start Thunderbird up with Panorama for the first time, it will take all of your messages from your old Mork databases and stick them in a new SQLite database, and we can start using them. And any new messages will also be put into this database, and we will stop using the Mork databases altogether. It is quite fast. I'm not entirely sure about using the term lightning fast yet. Wasn't me that wrote that. But it is quite fast. Certainly over some tasks, it is a lot faster than Mork. And one of the advantages that certainly some of our support guys like is that SQLite it's a fairly common file format, and there are lots of tools for using with it, which is certainly not true about Mork. You can use the SQLite executable itself and just go in there and run your own queries. I don't recommend it, but I am sure that some tools will crop up for analyzing your mail in different ways outside of Thunderbird, and I'm not sure how I feel about those things, but I'm sure they will exist. Some of the other advantages that SQLite has as a query language, that's what the Q stands for, is that you can query the database. You can say, hey, database, can you show me all of the messages that are between these two dates, or that are in this folder, or have this tag? And it's very simple to do. And you can handle the results in exactly the same way, no matter what the query is. Not for all queries, but that's beside the point. Yes, global search will be easier because all the messages are in the same place. We don't have to open every single folder's Mork file and worry about things like having too many files open at once, which Windows does not like. And we don't have to worry about opening those files, which can take a long time if they're very big. And it just really slows down Thunderbird's performance. So by avoiding all of that stuff, we should be making Thunderbird a lot faster and more responsive, and just a better user experience. As I said before, yeah, finding any subset of the data should be easier. I've already thought of some ways that we could do new things with our new database that they've been possible before, but just a little bit clunky, and it's so much easier when you can just type in a string into the code and make it do what you want with a single string. And another thing that we could kind of do with Mork before is that we will certainly be making an effort to do with it as we implement the new database, is we will be able to, when a new message comes in, we'll be able to look at it and change stuff around a bit so that we only have to do it once. I'm thinking of the formatting of the sender's address and their name. We kind of already do this in the existing database, but in the new one, we will make sure that when we're putting new messages into the database, then we would pre-formatting, or at least partially pre-formatting senders' addresses, so that when we want to display a list of messages, those addresses are already done. We don't have to waste any time trying to pass the message and the headers and turning that into the right things to display on the screen. It would be done for us, and things should be a lot faster, hopefully. Cool. That's that slide done.
Nice.
What else we got?
All right. So we took a quick detour on the history of why Thunderbird didn't have, or doesn't have, never had a proper conversation view. What are the challenges and the potential solutions that we wanted to adopt with a new database? Now let's talk about actual conversation view, the work week that we did in Vancouver. So the work on Panorama that Jeff did, and some conversation view UI, especially the thing that you can test with Gloda, they have been pushed throughout last year as side projects. We were experimenting with it while doing all the other work that we usually do. And we reached a point where we have an initial idea of an implementation, we have an initial idea of UI, but it's very complicated, and continuing these like side gigs explorations, it's not going to cut it. It's going to take like a long time. So we decided to grab a bunch of people, all the stakeholders and all the people that will be involved into this project, just group them all together, shove them in a room with a very gassy dog, and just see what will be the outcome of this. And of course, we struggled a lot. It was very difficult, but it was extremely educational, and we were able to accelerate a lot of the development of this implementation. The technical challenges are many, infinite, and probably we haven't found them all yet. The general issue is that Thunderbird's build has been built and maintained and kept upgraded throughout the past 25 years with just Mork in mind, with that type of parsing, with that type of storage. So it's not just a simple, oh, we don't use Mork anymore. It's just use an SQLite file and just swap it. No, it's a completely different rebuild of interfaces of how the code, the C++ and JavaScript code talk with each other, how many jumps we do from a language to another. It's a whole entangled mess that we need to first understand, then document, then test, because a lot of those things are not tested. And then after that stage, we can actually start ripping apart and implement a new thing without breaking all the stuff, because things happen, as I mentioned before. It's absolutely brutal. Jeff, do you want to give some highlights on the magical challenges that you've been facing?
I wanted to add that we have now the advantage of hindsight. When Thunderbird was created, a lot of the components, they were being built for the first time. The people who built them didn't really know what was needed before they started working on them. But we now have 20 years of Thunderbird history behind us and 10 years of Netscape before that. And so we know some of the challenges that the existing code has, and we can think about ways around that before we even start. So this project may be taking us some time, but we're not in the rush that our predecessors had, because they just wanted to get these features in the hands of users as soon as possible. And that's fair. They had a user base to build, but we'll be taking our time to make sure that we get the stuff right with the advantage of hindsight.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Anything else on
Yeah,
this?
so I'm just trying to think of what some of these challenges have been. We are starting from scratch with this database. We could do anything with it. What we are currently doing is we are trying to make it fit with all of the old systems, or at least most of the old systems, as best we can, so that we can test that it does all of the things that we want it to do, and so that we have a migration path forward. We should be able to, at some point, have both database systems in the code, and they should both be working. And once we've got the new one tested and we're happy with it, only then will we need to go back and remove the old system. And that will be a great day. I will be very happy removing some of these old things. But before we get to that stage, we need to get to a point where we can check that both things are doing the same thing. Once we've got rid of those old systems, we can move forward and start to do some of the new things that we want to do, and make Thunderbird better and finally have all the features that we wanted to have. But that's a fair way away from where we are at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Not only that, but there's a whole other layer of complexity that, of course, Thunderbird, every time we change a little bit of the UI, our users are extremely happy and we don't upset anybody because we're the best, of course. No, this is a real challenge because muscle memory is a real thing that we should try to not break as much as possible. And whenever we introduce a new thing or we implement a new feature, we should try to ease the user into this feature and not alienate them or not asking them to forget all the things that you did for the past 20 years. This is a new interface. Relearn everything from scratch. So the design challenges, the UX and UI challenges were many, and on top of all the technical challenges. And we did a lot of experimentation. It was actually incredibly useful to have the designers in the same room with the developers, because it's never easy to offload some technical challenges or give a good overview, a proper scope of work to designers that never had to handle some data complexity or how we handle data, how things are stored in the database, what can we show, what we can't. Designers, of course, they approach all the problems from a logical UX point of view. It would be logical to show these things in this way, and if you click this thing, it moves to that way. But then a lot of those assumptions and implementation and exploration might be validated or blocked by the backend on how the data is handled, how the data is passed. So having the same designers and the core developers working on these things in the same room and being able to quickly sync up and, hey, can we actually do this? Can we do this? Oh, no, actually, that's not how we handle things. We could potentially do these other things. It was absolutely beneficial. We were able to iterate multiple times, multiple days. We started with just a sketch on a drawing board, and then we did paper prototypes, and then we started doing actual user journey prototypes in Figma and try to follow all the actions that the user could use, but as well trying to implement a new thing without completely destroying the familiarity of the old thing is extremely challenging. So I think we think we figured it out for most parts, but of course this is an iterative process. We're going to release a first version and ask for user feedback and then do more exploration. We're not just going to shove a new UI and say, that's it, use it. And if you're upset, tough luck. We're going to try to do our best. What was the outcome of this work week? First of all, a couple of things, design and development outcome. The first design outcome was a somewhat close to mid to high fidelity visual prototypes. These won't reflect exactly the final look. So if you're looking at this video, don't freak out. The colors are incorrect. The icons are incorrect. We had a very limited time. We had to like put things in place just for reference. But this is what we're aiming to have. If you start consuming the new conversation view with the new database, you will have the ability to access your full thread. And we have some visual styles and visual implementation to quickly distinguish which one is the message that you're currently focused on, which one is your reply, which one is the message that you moved to the trash, but you didn't actually delete yet, so it's still part of the conversation. How do we visualize where a message was moved to a folder or in which folder they are and all these little things? What are the interaction points? What do we show if the user wants to see more things in the header? So we came out with a bunch of these iterations that now the front-end developers can use to continue their prototype. And the coding outcome was absolutely phenomenal. In the span of a few days, we were able to create a completely separate tab space. It's called panorama.xhtml. You can open in a separate tab, consume some local messages, and start iterating on development, trying to recreate what the designer wanted, but also at the same time validating that our database actually works and returns the proper data. Once again, don't freak out from the visuals, the screenshots. This is just a test. It's not going to be the final thing, but it was wonderful to be able to collaborate so tightly and move so fast and be focused on one thing. And now, even if we didn't finish, we are all on the same page. We documented all our exploration. We know what is the direction and what we want to achieve. And the work can continue a lot more smoother because we all have the same understanding and expectation of what is the final goal, what is the end goal, and the goalpost there is we won't need to have multiple meetings about what about this, what about that, but we forgot about these things, we forgot about that thing. We had that massive initial sprint that allows us to just put everything on the table, and it's a lot more clear as an objective. The road ahead, a million different things. As Jeff mentioned, having the new database will open the doors to all the things that we couldn't do in the past 20 years. And it's going to be beautiful. It's going to literally skyrocket and boost the competitiveness and of Thunderbird and our ability to create new features that service the users. There are a lot of steps. This is just a general overview. We're going to continue the implementation of Panorama, being able to index and store local messages when you receive them and use the old MORC to index existing messages. We're going to try to guarantee and maintain the old and new code in parallel for now, because this is not going to be it's done, let's switch. We're going to allow the users to test, and if they don't like it or it doesn't work reliably, they can go back to the old system. We're just not going to rip it apart and just show the new thing. And yes, in the meantime, because this is a very long exploration, we're probably going to continue some tiny improvements on the current Gloda implementation, things like front-end components, try to validate the front-end assumptions and the UX assumptions that we did during the design exploration by using what we currently have. If it's not optimal, we can expose it to the users. Anything that you want to add from here, Jeff?
Yeah, one of the things that we really came across during our work week was just how complex this thing is. Email seems like a simple thing, but when you get to the level of features that Thunderbird has acquired over the years, there's 1,000 different things that you could be doing, and we're trying to accommodate as many of them as we possibly can because people like these features. That's why we have them. So there were a number of times during our work week where the designers came to us and said, do we need to put this context menu item back? And us engineers at the other end of the room, yes, we need to do that too. I feel a little bit sorry for our designers because there is just a lot of stuff that we need to put in on your screen, or we at least need to be able to accommodate it somehow. It's a big challenge, and I imagine that we will be continuing to iterate on this stuff for quite some time just to try and get it right. As Alessandra was saying before, we don't want to just dump this on users. We don't want to have a new version of Thunderbird where it suddenly all happens, because that's not great for you, the user, and it's not great for our support channels, who would be swamped by an influx of people complaining about it. And it's not great for us as designers and engineers because just making all the changes at once it's an awful process. And it's kind of like what we have been doing with our ESR releases and just putting out a whole year's worth of changes at one point, and all of the problems surface at once. So we're going to try to avoid switching over to the new conversation view all at once. And try to avoid major problems with it.
Gonna do our best. We're just trying to do our best. But that's
Yes.
it. That's the whole presentation. Thank
Well,
you.
that's great. Thank you very much. Monica and I have some questions. And forgive if some of these are seem silly, because I'm not necessarily plugged into that world as much as you guys are. So in Thunderbird, we already have a threaded view. So how is conversation view different from threaded view, besides the database backend stuff?
Yeah, we were just like 10 minutes before we were talking with Jeff and I trying to like, what do we want to do with this threaded view? So the threaded view that we currently have is, it just shows the list of messages that belong to a same parent in that current folder. That's it. We can, as soon as you delete a message or one of those messages in the thread, you move it to another folder. It's not there anymore, and we just show that. And that has been the only thing similar to what other email clients and email services do out there that Thunderbird was able to do. It's the same concept, but the execution is different, and it's not on par to other things. So technically, a threaded view is the conversation view version alpha 0.01, the initial idea of a conversation view, but it is incomplete and yeah, it doesn't have everything.
You are having a conversation with someone over email and you do it the way most people do, then you're going to have the messages from the person you're talking to in your inbox, and what you said is going to be in your sent folder. So Thunderbird is kind of capable of displaying both sides of the conversation at once, but not really.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This reminds me of a couple painful moments as a history grad student being in archives where you only had the letters from one side in a conversation. And you'd be like, I knew there was something really good in whatever they sent, but no idea what that was. Yeah.
I have one quick question to kind of follow up. I know that at conferences, I've heard people request or ask about the ability to change threaded view so that the most recent message is on the top. So is Conversation View going to allow us to do this?
Ooh,
I love
yay.
it.
And I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of users that won't like it and they want the reverse back and maintain the old one, which is totally fine. We'll be able to do that, I guess.
But we can make a preference, right? To let
Yeah.
people like select, what they like. But yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Can I just
Cool.
say on that note that trying to implement that is killing me. I've
Please
been trying to
don't
figure
die.
out how to do it, and I have not achieved that yet.
Yeah, you
Okay.
got time. You got time.
Get
So I know that we kind of hinted that there would be some other features that this new database would enable besides conversation view. I know you mentioned a better search, which is something that our users have constantly asked for. Are there any other features that you're thinking of that you can share with us that maybe we could, I don't know, get an idea of what those might be?
Do you want
One
to
of the
take it?
things that I've thought about doing as I'm developing this stuff is I've realized that it would be really great if the quick filter bar had a date filter on it, and you could say, I know this message came in the last week, just search the messages in the last week. And from an engineering point of view, with this new database, that is so easy to implement. So if we can get that, we can probably get other things like it. It's just a case of using our imagination and thinking what people might want.
Ooh, nice. Oh, that would be really handy.
Yeah. From my point of view, I have a very distant dream of Thunderbird in the future acting and behaving like a cohesive application that just connects all the parts all together. Right now, it's still a little bit disconnected. You have your emails, and then you have your calendars, and then you have your address book.
Mhm.
I would love to have, and we could kind of do it right now already, all the things that I'm going to say, but with the new database, it's going to be much easier, much faster, much more elegant. Things like you access your address book and you click on a user and it shows you all the recent conversations that you had with that user directly there. Or a dashboard where you can just tell me all the things that I received today and the calendar event that I received from the messages that I received today. And like all these like data connection and having references and is not everything it's in its own tab or its own space, all disconnected. Like just
You're
having
not
your Thunderbird as a communication tool that you can do whatever you want.
Great.
you're not the first person to have this dream, and that's how we ended up with Cloda. But hopefully we don't make the same mistakes that Cloda has.
I mean, you live and learn, right?
I hope so.
So you mentioned calendar. I was curious. Email, we get calendar invites in our email all the time. With this new database backend, is that going to require a bunch of changes to the calendar code? Like, is there anything that we have to do to make sure the calendar still works as expected?
Not for now. Nothing will need to change because when you get a calendar invitation inside the email as an ICS attachment, we will still handle it the same way. Things that will change for sure, but later on will be how we present it in the UX. Because now, if you have a long conversation with multiple calendar invitations and you want to be able to open the reply that you sent with a follow-up calendar while looking at the latest calendar invite that you had at the same time, we need to display it in a much better way and also be able to process it without needing to reload the content and just do a bunch of like more modern, more intuitive and welcoming things. But from a technical point of view, the new database will not affect how we handle calendar invitations.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, I know in the talk, you all mentioned the database corruption issues and good time to disappear, Alex. It's like, nope, I'm noping out of this
I'm out.
conversation right now.
Yeah,
Bye.
never heard of the problem. I don't know what you're talking about.
So what steps besides getting out of this Zoom call are we taking to minimize, if not hopefully avoid, any corruption and data loss as we switch to the new database?
Being pointed at. It's a bit early for that. Obviously we try to keep these things in mind as we're designing stuff, but we are still pretty early on in the new database development. So it is a little hard to say. We have a test implementation of migrating the data from the old databases into the new one, and that works in the general case, but we haven't stress tested it and tried to break it yet. So I'm sure it is possible to break it. Yeah, we will try not to break everything.
There are some nice things that we get for free from these new implementation things, like since it's a completely separate database, we're not really touching Mork. We're not modifying those files. So if something goes wrong with the new database, the old database is for now is still there. We're not manipulating. The folder corruption that we had is that because we were overwriting those files incorrectly. Another wonderful thing that is one of my many, many dreams is SQLite, or just SQL in general, allows to do a rollback migration. So if you add some wrong
Oh my
data, you could
goodness.
have snapshots of your previous data before you set the new data. And if something goes wrong, you can just roll back. Things impossible in Mork. Mork is just a text file. If you update your text file, if you delete it, it's gone, unless you user have a physical copy of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's just tragic. Also, I feel the need for any regular State of the Thunder watchers who might be feeling that Roland just might hop into this call at any time at the many mentions of SQLite.
Yeah.
Might
So
summon him.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
His
it's
ears are
outside my
burning.
apartment. It's right here in Vancouver. It's just like riding
Very
his
true. He's
bicycle.
just gonna knock on your door. I heard we were talking about this.
SQLite? Yes.
That's great. Thank you for that image. Well, so we've praised SQLite for many reasons. Now I want to play devil's advocate. Are there
Ooh.
any expected limitations moving to this model, or is it all complete upside from Mork?
There's some limitations, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who can point them out better than I can, because they like to point out limitations and things. One of the things that worries me a little bit is because we will be putting all of this data into a single file. What happens if the file gets corrupted somehow? What happens if you are using a third-party tool to read through all your messages and it screws it up? And the answer to that is, at the moment, I don't really know, but also at the moment, this file is just an index of the messages which are stored separately in your profile or on your IMAP server or your Exchange server. And we can rebuild the database if we really have to. Just, you can do that with Mork as well. It's not the greatest experience, but I'm hoping that this is a thing that we don't have to deal with very often. And we will do our best to make sure that it's difficult to screw this up.
Okay, but it still sounds like the pros significantly outweigh the cons. So that's
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
Yep, this is one file that can go wrong instead of as many files as you have folders.
And then you cannot read, and you don't know what
And
went wrong.
you can't read it for yourself. Or you can if you've spent several years trying to decode how this all works, but it's not fun.
That
And
doesn't sound fun,
just
no.
going back to the folder corruption issues that we had, part of that was due to the fact that we were trying to modify a database, and the database is a file, and at certain points we need to close the file so that we can do things to it and reopen it again later. And in between, something else might have happened to the file, or Windows might come along and says, I'm still using that, you can't close that, and just stuff everything up. SQLite being a database format, we're kind of offloading all of those problems to the people who maintain that project, and they're very good at it. So that is something I'm certainly glad I don't have to think about that too much anymore. They've got experts.
Yeah, there are a million upsides to this. Like a couple that are noticeable, but we kind of never talk about is our intention is to make Thunderbird more sustainable. And how do you make it more sustainable? You just make it more approachable, not just for users, but also for developers. When a developer is curious about, I would like to add this to Thunderbird to fix that, like, oh yeah, we do Mork and we have XPCOM, and actually this is Gecko C++, it's not Thunder C++. Like all these things, we're trying to step away and use standard implementations. And SQLite is kind of a no-brainer. It's been around for decades. It's extremely well maintained, extremely well known, stable, and fast. Yes, there will be some shortcomings and some difficulties and issues that we will need to tackle. Is not just cookies and rainbows, but is honestly like a dream compared to Mork. Right? There's no doubt that this is the right move. There's not a single person in our team said like, maybe we should stay with Mork. Like, nah, it's not.
And another thing it is documented. You can
Mm.
point someone else into how it works.
Documentation. Yeah, always good. So Heather, I switched the questions up because
I
it
love
seemed like
that.
this. Yes. So
Yeah.
since Panorama, as we've been talking about, common SQL database, will we now need to update the version of, okay, is it SQLite, SQLite? Is there a standard?
That's who you talk to. And
SQLite.
what day of the
That
week it
makes
is in my
someone
case.
mad.
Don't
Okay,
think about it. Just do it.
Squillet.
Well,
So whatever we call it, will we need to update the version used to keep up to date with current fixes for any vulnerabilities?
yes and no. Like we definitely want to keep it updated if there are security problems with it or that sort of thing, or critical bugs. But no, because our vision of it is maintained by Mozilla Corporation, the Firefox people, and we get it for free.
Yep.
I'm
Thanks,
sure if there is
upstream.
something critical that we need, we can go and lean on their door and say, hey, could you update this for us? But that is pretty rare with this product. I can't think of a time where we had to do an emergency release of something because of the database.
Well, that's
Nice.
And
great.
they use it for all
Excellent.
sorts of things, so they would know.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're kind of doing the heavy lifting there, and we're leveraging that. That's great. How will this new database model affect folder compaction?
Oh, goody. Great question. Folder compaction is, just to explain it a bit for the people listening, we write a list of all the messages into your profile directory. If you get 5 messages and then you delete the third one, we don't immediately remove that from the file on your disk. A process called folder compaction comes along later and rewrites the entire file. So you just have the first, second, fourth, and fifth messages in that file, which saves you all the space of the third message. That process, at least in the foreseeable future, will still be required. We will not be storing the contents of your messages in our database. Maybe in the future we will. I know some people are really excited about being able to do that, but that is something to think about for another day. So folder compaction will still be required, but the database side of stuff, which is also a part of that, you have to update the database to point to the new locations of the messages, should be a lot more reliable. And if something goes wrong, we can roll it back, which you cannot do with a Mork database.
That's great. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Very nice. So this kind of, I think, ties into some of the things we've been talking about in recent State of the Thunders, going through the top Mozilla Connect stuff, of which Conversation View has obviously been very high up there. Obviously, as we've just watched in this talk, adding a true conversation view takes a lot of work on the back end. So are there ways that maybe we can improve our communication, whether it's on Connect or Bugzilla, or even when somebody just asks us on Mastodon, when users and community members say, hey, we really want this thing, but that thing requires years worth of work on the code?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very complicated question to answer. Like the easy answer would be we just share the meta bug with them, and they can follow all the hundreds of bugs that we push per month, and they can see that it's an infinite challenge here. But how is that beneficial to the majority of the users? A lot of our users, me involved, I put myself into the same category, don't fully understand the technical intricacies of something this big. That's why we have specialized people like Jeff that do like specific things, and then we have like front-end engineers that do like, it's impossible for one person to understand the entirety of this complexity unless they take like years and years to study and document, and maybe they can reach that. So communicating these type of things to our users is very challenging because the users obviously, rightly so, they just want to know, when am I gonna able to use it? When is this feature ready? So the thing that we will try to do is plan better and scope better. If we understand better how complex one thing is, we can have much more approximately accurate estimate, and at least we can elevate the trust in our user, that if we say that it's going to take us 9 months, it's going to actually take us maybe 10 months or maybe even 8 months. But we need to step away from, oh, we're going to have it in a few months, and then 2 years have passed and it's not done yet. So planning, scoping, writing documentation down, and sharing as much progress as possible and putting it out there. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I hear some complaints from a lot of different people. You, Monica and Heather, you know this better than me. It's challenging to constantly engage with the community and constantly create content to push it out there and push it updates and write blog posts and write things. And then you see the stats and, well, this episode were like 50 people watched it. Like, is it really useful? 100%. Those 50 people now have the knowledge. And then if someone asks us a question, we can redirect it to an article that we wrote 2 years ago, but no one read it at the time because no one was interested. Doesn't matter. Our success and our engagement with the community is not about the volume. It's about the how easy we make our information searchable and foundable on the long term.
Yeah.
So it's an uphill battle, and this is a very winded answer to say it's difficult. We don't know. We'll try to do better.
Exactly. Thank you.
I mean, I think at a very least, like someone that doesn't understand the complexities can still go to this metabug and see like, whoa, this is really active. They're really doing a lot, whatever that is.
Exactly. Kind of with the exchange stuff. It's like, oh, well, it's like there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's important to communicate to people asking that sort of question that, yeah, we are actually working on this because we want it to. And I guess one of the benefits of having a work week like we just did is we can now show people some of the stuff we are working on because there are pictures. It's very difficult to communicate, hey, we're working on a new database to somebody who doesn't really think about databases, but hey, we can point to these designs that we were working on last week and say, look, this stuff is happening. You can see it happening, and this is what it potentially will look like. Yeah, I can understand the frustration of a lot of people who say things like, oh, but I would use Thunderbird, but the search sucks. And the search has sucked for a long time, and it seems like nothing is happening. But we can't, or it could work faster. It wouldn't be very good for us. And it probably wouldn't be very good for the product if we would try to rush through this. What we can do as we are trying to build a replacement for a lot of things is hopefully there's some lessons we can learn that we can bring back into the existing stuff and just freshen it up a bit so that it's gradually improving towards the new thing. A lot of the stuff with this new database project is not going to translate back, but there's bound to be some stuff we can learn and ship sooner, hopefully. So yeah, if you're one of these people out there who is waiting and waiting and waiting for the stuff to happen, just yeah, sorry, but you're gonna have to hold on a bit longer, but it'll be worth it.
I think that the thoughtful speed at which you guys are moving is showing like a dedication to doing it right. And I think that that's really meaningful.
Yeah, I've talked about hindsight before, and having the time to work on stuff. As we are building this stuff, we're trying to do all the right things, and we're trying to document it. We're trying to add the tests that it needs, because that's how a software project should work. But also because we know that the thing that we are trying to replace was not documented well, and it was not tested overly well, and we're trying to learn those lessons from the past.
Right.
And even those processes themselves help us write better software because they help us to think about stuff in a different way.
Well, it sounds like this work week was incredibly valuable, even if, Jeff, you had to fly halfway across the world.
And back again tonight.
And then back again tonight. Oh my goodness. So are you gonna have like another maybe work week on the same thing in like 6 months or something? What do you see the value of work weeks in general being.
Yeah. Specifically about conversation view, maybe next year we're planning to meet the whole team around probably May or June. We'll revisit it back. But the value of this type of work week is incredible for kicking off a very complicated project that otherwise would require us many months, many weeks to just keep talking about it because people still didn't understand it. Like, actually, we forgot about this. And this happened specifically to us. Like, Jeff had the idea of the global database and communicating and sharing with all the others. And some people are busy doing other things. So sometimes they just look at the patches like, yeah, it looks good enough, but they're not there. And they don't have the time and space to just think about one thing and ask all the questions and write down all your doubts and sync up and experiment and prototype. So doing work weeks not too often, it's absolutely valuable. One thing that we learn also is human connection and the ability to communicate better with each other. Of course, we're all in our ward and we like to focus in our beautiful room with the guitar in the background and just do all our coding that we want to do. But when we interact with a person that has a higher, lower, or even the same level of knowledge on a specific topic, we need to learn how to communicate and share that knowledge. We need to talk less jargon. We need to be more open to criticism. And doing this in a Zoom call is very alienating sometimes. Being in the same room, it brings a different level of energy. Sometimes it just drains all your energy, but that's life. That's how also you learn how to interact with a person when they're not at their 100%. So it helps a lot of developing soft skills other than just making the work, the kickoff of the work a lot faster.
So we should all just like move into a compound and work together.
No, we
Have a
will
thunder
last 2
cult.
months.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
We would all quit after 2 months.
I know, but there would be gassy puppies to pet. So
I'm not
That
sorry I
Friday
missed
afternoon.
that.
Let me tell you, that Friday afternoon was rough. We were trying to wrap it up and conclude things. And once every, I would say, half an hour, this background noise of like, just keep this in, don't edit it out. Or sometimes there were the silent killers that we were talking and then all of a sudden everybody started making the, oh, what died in this room? Yeah, brutal.
Oh, yeah.
It was a bonding experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah, trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Through gassy
Yeah.
dogs. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So if people are watching this and they're like, yeah, this is totally worth the wait, I want to stay up to date. And I maybe want to be involved in some of these future kind of user studies that you all were mentioning. Where's the best place for them to get information?
All of the mailing lists. So Jeff is doing a brilliant work in sharing some updates, especially when there are like substantial monthly updates on TB planning. It's our primarily mailing list where we share things that are not finished yet and we're planning to and we're currently working on. Definitely continue following State of the Thunder. We're going to use that platform to announce any beautiful, wonderful things. The UX mailing list, if you're interested in seeing UX exploration in the coming weeks, the design team will have time to polish the first round of design and share some probably usability and accessibility studies at the early stages of prototypes. And if you're brave enough, Bugzilla, if you really want to have a hard time with your email with all the notifications. But any other places, Jeff?
I thought you were going to mention our stack of work in progress patches.
Oh yes, that's true.
Which
Okay.
you could try out. You'd have
Yeah.
to be pretty brave, and I don't recommend that. But there are enough patches on Bugzilla at the moment to at least get started if you are willing to invest the time in figuring out how they work and what you need to be doing. There's
so
not a lot of
these-
that documented right now, but we'll
And
get
so
there.
these would be for people using daily, or would this be even beyond daily?
It's for people that are building Thunderbird locally from source.
Oh, yeah.
It's only for that for now.
Well, thanks.
But I'll send
Yeah.
you a full list of instructions and links to places that you can put in the description of this video. And if people are interested, they can try it. I'm going to put this warning everywhere, but it's better repeating. Please, 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 please just use a new profile with local messages that you don't care about because it's experimental. Don't use it with
Mhm.
your actual email. Please, please. That's it.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that any of this stuff is actually working at any given time. It is work in progress, and it could be broken in progress.
And Heather, would this be something that your new videos would be helpful for building the Thunderbird?
Yeah, we could absolutely do, you mean like do a video on how to test this out, how to play with this? Is that what you're
Well, I'm just
recommending, or-
wondering, like, if somebody has never built Thunderbird from scratch, could they watch one of your videos to
Oh,
learn?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have some videos to show people how to get started building Thunderbird on their platform of choice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you both very much for having this work week, organizing it, doing it, sharing it, being here.
Seriously.
It's exciting. We had a conversation view office hours, I think like a year ago. And so maybe we can do it again in another year.
Yeah.
Annually, just check in.
That's our cadence, yes.
Hopefully, in a year we have more to show you.
Yeah, maybe the next time will be like a show and tell. That would be great.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for being here and being such wonderful guests to talk
Mhm.
about this cool topic.
yeah. And Jeff, have a good flight home.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I'll try.
yeah. All right. Well, we'll say bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye,
Bye for now.
everyone.